This real question of compatibility with our international obligations that I want to discuss with Paul Turner, Head of Chambers and Immigration Barrister at Imperium Chambers. Paul, you know, you can see what the legislation says, and we discussed the political reasons why it's being done. If this legislation, which will go through the third reading tonight, and let's say it goes through the House of Lords, would this legislation be compatible with our international obligations?
No, and the Secretary of State is fully aware of that. Before any bill is put before Parliament, there is an obligation under the Human Rights Act, which was brought in 1998, for the Minister to say whether the Act is compatible with the Human Rights Act or with the ECHR. And
yeah, just to be clear for our viewers and listeners, the Human Rights Act was where we basically incorporated the European Convention into British law.
Tony Blair, bringing human rights home, it was a slogan. Yeah. They love a slogan, don't they? So in it, there's an obligation for the Minister who introduces it to say whether or not the law that they're proposing is compatible with our obligations under the ECHR. She was unable to say that, and it is said that she has been advised that there is a more than 50% chance that the law is incompatible with our European obligations. Now, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors and talk about it, and as we've heard from the political side, they've ramped up the volume. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting that we've seen today individuals such as Sir Geoffrey Cox QC or KC, a former Attorney General, and he raised a valid point. Under the ECHR, one can apply for what's called an injunction, a Rule 39 application, and the ECHR will give an indication. That indication is not legally binding. The government can still remove the person. There's no need for this legislation. The government can...
So why would there... So what happened? I mean, last year there was a plane on the tarmac about to send a few people off to Rwanda, and at 10 o'clock at night, an unnamed so-called judge in Strasbourg says, no, you can't do it.
Now,
and that's what Suella Braverman's trying to overcome.
I think the problem is, in reality, the plane that was on the tarmac, and I'm not quite sure whether it was 50 or 60 people that they hoped to get on the plane, the vast majority, so I think 30 or 40 people, if not more, were taken off by UK judges under UK laws, and that there were only about 2 or 3 people left on the plane when the ECHR...
OK, so those that were taken off by UK judges under UK law now would not be taken off if this legislation goes through. Although each case is specific, I know.
I think it's valid. The question raised is valid, but the issue is, again, taken off to where? Because the whole Rwanda policy is in the Court of Appeal. It hasn't yet been heard yet in the Court of Appeal. And there's every possibility that if the government loses, that they'll take it to the Supreme Court, and if the applicants lose, they'll take it to the Supreme Court. So, really, we have a stasis.
What we want, and doing what a majority Democratic position supports, and I think the Brexit vote and an 80-seat majority make it very clear that they wanted our government to control the borders and do what they have to do. There is a democratic mandate to do this, and that's an important point. If our international obligations conflict with that, then surely the logic is we change our international obligations by leaving ECHR.
Well, there's no need to leave the ECHR if you process the asylum claims quickly. There's a backlog of about 166 asylum claims. 166,000, yeah, and it's increased by 5% over the last few months. So it's easy to focus on this legislation if they can legislate themselves out of trouble. Last year, I think it was in about June, they made it a criminal offence to enter the country illegally. 45,000 people entered the country illegally. Of that, you'll be surprised to know, Nigel, only 100 were prosecuted. It doesn't send much of a message. So you can legislate as much as you want. Two things. When you've got these people... And where I think Suella Braverman has made a huge error is she has given herself a duty to detain and remove the people. She's imposing a duty on herself. Now, the question is, if the estimated 80,000 people arrive, where are they going to put them? I mean, they could put them in Napier Barracks, where they put them before,
Yeah.
which was run by a private company, which was found to be people who were held illegally.
Or I'll finish on this point. We just do what the Australians did. We say to hell with our international obligations. They towed them back to Indonesia. Maybe that's what we're going to have to do.
Well, do you know, there's a compromise there, Nigel, and really looking at it is, I believe we promised the French 500 million.
Yep.
I mean, as I say, we've given the Rwandans 120 million. We've given 500 million to the French. We've got what's called juxtaposed immigration control. Anyone that's been across the Channel knows that you get checked by the French in England, checked by the English in France. Why don't we put the centres in France? We're giving the French all the money. Why don't we just build the centres there? Process the claims in France.
Yeah, and anyone in the English Channel in a dinghy gets taken to a centre in France.
And then they can have their claims processed,
right.
and
well,
if they're successful, they can come to the UK.
If we can stop them landing on the shore in this country, we may just deal with it. Paul Turner, thank you. And you can see it is a complex debate, but it's a really important one, and it's something that really could cost the Conservatives the next general election. In a moment, police at record numbers. Well, that sounds like great news, but I don't seem to see any of them. In a minute, I'll try and find out why.